Whoa. Welcome back to Conversations, where we share my connections, stories, and key learnings in hopes of giving back to the next generation. If you like what we put together today, please like, comment, subscribe to show your support. Let's roll. Welcome back to Conversations. I'm here with an extra special guest today, National Director. I'd call him the sales goat. Somebody that made a big impact early on in my career and has continued to mentor me and be a friend and somebody that, I've really looked up to. So Luke, I really appreciate you.
So
Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
And we're here in the Saint and the Duck, man. And we're here in a pretty special place, a place that I actually got to move and spend a little bit of time, with Luke early in my career. But before we get started, Luke, I just wanted to, got a couple things for you. I got something for you.
Okay.
This is, from Oregon, where I know you lived as well and have an affinity for.
Great heart for Oregon. 3 of my 4 kids were born there.
Absolutely. And this is Soma, Luke. This is a kombucha company. They say that this product has more probiotics than any other kombucha on the market. So billions more health benefits. And it's mighty tasty. So why don't we get a toast to Youngstown real quick?
Should we crack this thing?
Crack it, absolutely.
Let's do it, man. I actually drink a kombucha pretty much every day. So this is great.
All right. Cheers. All right.
Oh, wow. That's great.
It's amazing.
Great taste.
And this is the strawberry flavored. This show is sponsored by Soma Kombucha. Kombucha is a probiotic drink filled with healthy bacteria that works in your digestive system to support a healthy and happy and vibrant life. What sets Soma apart is that it has billions more probiotics than other brands. It is naturally carbonated and naturally sweet because of the proprietary slow fermentation process that produces fructose without spiking blood sugar, like traditional white sugar. Soma is Portland's favorite kombucha, having won Best Kombucha several times. Use code CONVERSATIONS today to support our mission at somakombucha.com. The link is in the description below. Now back to the show. So let's get started, man. Sure. Tell me about Youngstown. Why did we need to film here? I mean, we've all heard the Bruce Springsteen song. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. Tells a great history. But why do we need to film here?
Well, I was born and raised here.
Okay.
My father was born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio. He's actually in the Youngstown State Football Hall of Fame, was a very undersized center at East High. My grandfather's buried here. I spent my entire childhood in Youngstown, Ohio. Know every nook and cranny, more or less.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And what type of impact did it have on you?
You know, I grew up as a latchkey kid. So my mom worked afternoons most of my life, probably from like 7 or 8 years old on until I moved out at about 17, 18. And I had a house to myself. I'm an only child. Well, was raised an only child. My father has children as well, that live in the Youngstown area. One lives in Seattle actually now. And it was pretty peaceful. Like my mom took great care of me. She would make, a huge pot of macaroni, homemade sauce. It would take days to make this sauce. And that's what I ate every day, like until she made it again on Sunday. And I just ran around playing a lot of basketball, riding bikes in Mill Creek Park, playing backyard football in the backfield. My mom literally used to mow this field with a push mower. Yeah.
It's
a 100-yard football field.
Wow.
Yeah. So just a great childhood. I will say Youngstown is one of those places where you need to be on your toes. You need to be alert. But my mom told me this, in my experience, even though I was shot at 3 times by the time I was 16 years old, and I'll qualify
I'm not laughing, but wild.
My mom said, if you don't go to the wrong place at the wrong time and do the wrong thing, the likelihood of anything bad happening to you is probably very low.
Okay.
2 of those times I got shot at, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time doing the wrong thing.
Okay.
The last time, that was like a fluke thing. I don't know what was going on there, but it was a place that I have great memories of. Despite kind of some of the way Youngstown has broken down over the years and, has kind of been known for some corruption and a lot of jobs leaving. My memory is not that. Like my mom worked in a factory at General Electric for almost 40 years. She probably never made more than $15 an hour. And I felt like I grew up like a king. I had everything I ever wanted, good friends all around me. So it was, my experience in Youngstown was great.
I'd say, well, number one, I appreciate you sharing that, right? I think a lot of times we see these folks in high level positions and you don't necessarily understand their story or what they came from or what struggles they went through. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit about your childhood there. Obviously, we saw a lot of different pieces of Youngstown today, and I love just kind of getting the tour and reminiscing about being back here with you, I think, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear, like, where did you take me today and what's the significance of each place?
There's so many great places that, obviously we couldn't hit them all. So we tried to get to the most significant ones. We started with the Flower Garden, which in the early 1900s was donated to the city, along with all of Mill Creek Park. So Mill Creek Park is this beautiful, vast park that runs all throughout every side of the city of Youngstown. There's entryways to this park from every side of town. And the Flower Garden to me is like the crown jewel.
Okay.
You can see it from the highway. We obviously went to the overlook, and you can see all of downtown Youngstown. My father actually got married to my stepmother's chapeau there. They had a beautiful 23-year marriage before he passed away. So that's a special place. He was about my age when he got, maybe a couple of years older. So seeing pictures and videos of him at that wedding, at that park. So that was a significant place. And then we went to visit Champion Street, which we'll go and get some, other pics there in the basketball court. But, we stopped by some significant childhood memory places, like the house I grew up in, 1725 Silliman Street. Guy comes walking out, greets us. That was the heart of Youngstown.
Okay.
Like, people are down to earth here.
Yeah.
People are friendly here. And again, if you're not doing wrong, you're probably safe. You're probably going to make friends real easy here. Okay. You saw that. You experienced that for yourself. So,
I personally, the one thing I loved about that house was that basketball hoop in the back. And in the grass. That was the coolest part.
That's a great story too. That's 11-foot high rim.
Okay.
All the neighbors and myself would play on that until we couldn't see anymore. Wasn't much of a dribbler until I was in my teens, but I could shoot the hell out of it.
And even to this day, I mean, that's one thing. Obviously, I'm a shooter, but I've seen your shot and you get tremendous arc on it. And it's probably the Kyrie story with the layups. Yep. That maybe crafted your shooting ability. So it's pretty neat.
It was neat to visit there and see that goal still up there, because that probably went up when I was 10 years old. I'm almost 42. Okay. So that's pretty cool.
Wow.
However many people have lived there, that hoop remains.
When I went to French Lick, Indiana to find Larry Bird, who we'll talk about, because that's been a big part of our friendship and connection. But it was so cool to see the hoop that he grew up shooting on right there, still in the driveway. And you just imagine and think, and people spend a lot of time out there as kids shooting the ball.
That was my therapist. That was my best friend. As an only child, like, if my friends were grounded or had to do more homework than I probably did, I was there by myself at my court putting up shots. And that was my piece.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I think we share that, because that's, I grew up on the court and that was my outlet. And I think for kids, you got to have an outlet, and that's why sports are so important. But that was neat. Thank you for taking me there. I want to ask you, Luke, like, what does Youngstown mean to you? Obviously, there's a lot of different pieces to it. I mean, we hear your stories about getting shot at 3 times. I'm sure there's mixed emotions that come with this place. So I want to hear from your perspective. What's it mean to you?
I'll start by saying Youngstown for me is home, because it's the resting place of my best friend and my father, Jack LaPresta.
Okay.
Youngstown is home because it feels like family to me.
Yeah.
That said, there are definitely mixed emotions. I think about the history of Youngstown, and it's deeply saddening to me. And not to get too political, I'm a patriot. I served in the Air Force. I love this country. I do grieve for this country. And a part of that grief is Youngstown. Black Monday, it's a historical, look that up. Black Monday, 1977 was the beginning of really the demise of Youngstown. You had great paying steel jobs. My grandfather, who came from Italy, worked in the steel mill for over 40 years.
Much like these factories.
Much like the factory we're in, right? This was an old tire factory. All these jobs, it started a chain reaction. 50,000 steel workers lose their job. There's not some other industry at this time for them to plug into. These are hardworking family people that are going home, paying their bills, raising their kids, putting money into their community and stimulating the economy. And all of a sudden, within a matter of no time, it evaporates. To me, that is the epitome, and we're watching it real time in different industries greed.
Yep.
You had these steel companies that were making great profits, by the way.
I mean, this was the third largest steel producing city in America.
That's right.
It's crazy.
All this profit's coming in. They're doing well. Certainly they can keep the lights on. But to make even greater profits, they threw away all these human beings. Didn't consider the ripple effect, the generational ripple effect that leads us to where we're sitting today.
Yeah.
What happens to desperate people? They do desperate things. The mafia, huge Cleveland and Pittsburgh mafia factions here. The mafia begins to take over. At that time, the drug of choice was gambling.
Yeah.
So, it's funny now. It's like super legal, super addictive little apps that people went to prison and jail for that stuff back then.
Wow.
The mafia comes in and that was the next best job. So now you have these working class, honest people that were raising their family, can't feed their family now.
Wow.
They get into either working for the mob and doing crime and perpetuating crime in the community, or now they're gambling, hoping they can save their misfortune in one foul swoop, and they lose everything. They go from desperate to even more desperate, turn to drugs and alcohol. And that ripple has now been multi-generation. And you look at Youngstown now and
sad.
It breaks my heart. And it's one of so many Rust Belt, Midwest, hardworking places with good people that have fallen apart as a result of literal corporate greed. This was avoidable. Our government could have stepped in and said, no, we'll either give you tax benefits to stay, or we're going to make it too hard for you to ship these jobs out.
Yeah.
But we didn't do that. We didn't care. We licked our chops at the time. It was a fast win. Now you fast forward all these years later and you see the short-term gain is long-term loss.
I appreciate you sharing your perspective, and obviously coming out of Youngstown, right? You have an amazing story making it out of here and finding success. I want to talk a little bit about that. So some of my best memories with you are out in the field selling, right? We used to sell all over Youngstown, really all over the country. We spent time.
B2B, door to door, makes no difference.
Over the phone. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I want to ask you, what made you fall in love with selling?
I wanted to be like my father. My dad was like real life Dean Martin. He was this tall, handsome, gregarious man, never worked for a person in his life, was really loved to cook, was a great, great cook. But he was a sales guy. Not sophisticated, was born in 1942, but he had the gift of gab. His sister, my Aunt Gigi, would tell him he had a silver tongue.
Okay.
And really his whole side of the family really did. They were they're just great people to this day. I looked up to him like so many young boys look up to their father. And his wife, Chapeau, and he started working on importing. And I'm going to be honest, we're on video, whatever, it's years removed, but he was bringing in knockoff stuff, Oakleys, Rolexes, pen sets was a big thing. All the Tommy jackets, all knockoff stuff. So in school, as a junior hire, I had two lockers. I had a book locker and I had my merchandise locker. My dad would consign me stuff to sell to the friends of mine at school. On the weekends, we'd go to flea markets.
Yep.
And he would leave me at one booth, go to a totally different side of the market selling similar things to double capitalize on our 13 hours there.
Yeah.
And he always told me, don't be a wallflower. Talk to everybody. There are other people at this market selling the same damn thing as we are for the same fucking price or better.
Yeah.
The difference is they hired somebody that's terrified of people, that's going to sit there like a wallflower, not say a word, and you're not going to do that.
Love it.
You're going to talk to every single person that walks by. And I was terrified. I was 12, 13 years old. But once I started doing it, and he's paying me a percentage of what I sell, I've got all this money in my pocket. I'm a kid. People don't have money in their pocket in Youngstown. I rode that high. By the time I was in my late teens, I knew that was something that could propel me into something greater. Yeah. I didn't know what, certainly not what it became. Yeah. I would have never imagined. I pinch myself every day, but I knew that I could make a living. I could survive by talking to people.
I love hearing that. And I think we obviously share a lot of similarities in our story and our journey. And some of my best memories as a kid are, you hear me talk about Justin, who you knew that we lost. And rest in peace to Justin, man. Yeah. But, we grew up selling burn CDs, getting the fake Oakleys in Tijuana and flipping them at school and getting the candy half price after Christmas or Valentine's Day and selling it. And, it's interesting how many of those lessons apply to our career, right? You think about talking to everybody. I mean, you think it early in our career, being at the kiosks, right? Like you had to talk to everybody. And if you did, you were successful and made actually really good money. Right. You could make a living. So that's neat. And I appreciate you talking about your father. I'd love to hear, like, what additional lessons did you take from your father?
My dad had 3 marriages, married his high school sweetheart, had 2 sons and a daughter, boy, girl, boy, was wild in his youth. My dad was a risk taker, way more so than me. I would say I'm very conservative when it comes to risk. Physically, monetarily, he was the opposite. He was like, he would dare to go for it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. That inspired me. But, my mom and he divorced when I was 2. And pretty quickly thereafter, he married this just wonderful woman that I got to watch their love story for, multiple decades. She actually wrote a book after he passed, The Love Recipe. Okay. And it's like love letters that he wrote her. Wow. Just an amazing, amazing man that was fun to be around. He'd walk into a room and be singing songs. He made me want to be a person other people wanted to be around.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, you've made a life out of that. So it's pretty incredible. Right. Obviously I got to know your mom when I was out here and in her visiting Oregon or going to see you guys in Florida. There's been a number of times that I've gotten to catch up with her and appreciate my relationship with her.
Yeah, she loves you.
She
talks
incredible.
About you all the time.
And she's hilarious and one of a kind. But I want to just allow, this show is not just about trying to get clicks or views, right? Like I want to make a video. Not only are we giving back these learnings, but a big part of it is like, I want to make something that you're proud of, that you can pass on to your children, you can share with your family, that really allows you and your spirit to live on one day, right? Yeah. And that's kind of at the core of it. That's important to me. So I want to ask you, I want to give you an opportunity. Is there any message you want to give your mom?
Yeah. I kind of had the best of both worlds. Despite growing up in a single parent home, my father was super gifted in one way, and my mother was super influential in another way. They both worked hard. My dad was the pizzazz, silver-tongued talker. My mom was the survivor. She grew up in the projects in Western Pennsylvania. Her father was a barber, one of 5 kids. They never had a penny to pinch. Her mother died at a pretty young age. And she got a job in the factory at 17 at General Electric, and she worked that job until she retired. Sometimes 6 days a week. I remember years, 6 days a week, years on end. Almost never missed a day. Wow. So on one end, I had this influence of gift of gab, personability, life of the party. And on the other hand, I had this great influencer in my mother who taught me the meaning and value of hard work and doing the right thing. Okay. And I mean, geez, she was single she might have dated one guy, and I feel bad. I wish she did find somebody, but I was her top priority. And that taught me how to be a parent as well. Another thing definitely I've taken from her sense of humor. She always jokes like her siblings and family didn't always get her. She was a little bit like of an oddball. Her sense of humor is unique. Our relationship is even unique. When people hear us interact and talk, we cuss, we say funny, weird, inappropriate stuff to each other. It sounds from the outside looking in confusing and odd. Yeah. It's her sense of humor and mine mirrored back that she gave me. She loves to laugh. She's very silly, huge giver. I mean, would give you the shirt off her back. And, I give her a tough time. Like I kind of pick on my mom. Like, I was in the house with her, like it was me and her. And, it was like nitpick stuff, not mean hearted, but nitpick stuff. She nitpicks back. That's a part of our relationship and dynamic, but she'll give me advice, and I'm stubborn by nature and I'm combative even by nature. And so she'll give it to me and I'm like, what does this lady know? Like she worked in a factory in Youngstown for 40 years. Like, why is she telling me this? Yeah. And then a week will go by and it'll be ringing in my ear. It'll be some advice about how to be a father, or, you know, maybe you should think about this at work. And damn it, if I would tell you, like, I'll go back to her advice. I don't tell her if she sees this video, like, that's all right. I don't tell her, like, wow, I really heard you on that. And I did exactly what you said. Yeah. Cause I'm embarrassed. Yeah. But man, I can't tell you how many times that's happened. So she has this weird indirect influence on me now. And I was able to get her a house, move her out of Youngstown in 2021. So she lives a mile down the road. And most times that's a blessing. And sometimes it's, you know, she's funny and weird, and I love her.
That's amazing. And obviously I in the time I've been here, I've learned pretty quickly how big of a family you have. And I wanted to ask you, and I know we sat obviously with Kelly, which was a pretty special moment for us after 15 years of searching for the ghosts. We found him. But I wanted to ask, like, you know, when you think about his fight against Jermaine Taylor and the significance that fight held to the city of Youngstown, you know, what was that moment like, watching that knockout and seeing somebody rise from Youngstown and become world champion?
Sitting with him yesterday, recounting the knockdown that he suffered early, second round from Jermaine, I teared up thinking about that.
Yeah. I think he did too.
He did too. I remember, so Kelly's grandmother on his father's side is my grandfather's little sister.
Yeah.
And so we had this relationship. We grew up on different sides of town. He's a few months older than, I don't even know that he's a year older than me. I think he went to a private school, so we didn't go to the same school, but we bump into each other. I was a YMCA rat. Like, I'm telling you, Sky, like, the weather here can be pretty bad most of the year.
Yeah.
So I lived in the gym at the YMCA, and I'd see him and his father, like, young age, man, like 12, 13, like lifting weights, training hard. He'd have black eyes.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, yesterday, man, I was playing in the lower gym, and I went down to the weight room when I was done and saw him in there with the black eyes. And I thought for like a split second, like, man, is his dad doing this to him? And I asked him, I was like, what's going on, man? Like, what's with the black eyes? Why are you training so hard? He's like, boxing, man. I'm at, you know, this Southside gym. This is what I want to do. 12, 13 years old.
Wow.
And I thought in my head, man, he's kind of skinny for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Turns out he's got one of the most wicked overhand rights in the history of the sport. He goes on to just like knock everybody out for years and years on end. And, you know, that fight, we all got together in my dad's house, all my, you know, aunts.
This was shortly before your father died, right?
Oh, this was before my dad died. Yeah, shortly before. My son Heston's 15. He was not born yet. And, you know, I was living in Oregon.
Yeah.
And we flew in for that event. Like, my dad and I both love boxing, first of all. Before Kelly, any of that, we love the sport of boxing. And we, you know, ecstatic. Like, he's finally getting a shot. Cause he was kind of overlooked for a while. He was knocking all these guys out and really not getting a shot. Finally gets this shot. And at the time it was like, God, this guy seems like an invincible opponent at the time.
Yeah.
And I had cousins there. All my aunts were there. Extended family were packed in my dad's living room. And Kelly starts out hot. Like, holy shit. Like, he's confident. He's doing it.
Yeah.
He's going to get him. Second round comes. And I mean, I can feel the emotion right now. Like, my heart went into my throat. He gets hit. It felt like with 15 unanswered shots in the middle of the ring.
I mean, you could just see his face move when he was getting hit.
Brutal shots.
Yeah.
And this really shows like the character and heart of Kelly Pavlik. Like, you talk about an American sports hero.
Yeah.
This guy does not because I have a relationship with him. Remove yourself from that and think who this man is. Takes these shots from the champion of the world, middle of the ring, collects his courage, gets up, gets back in the fight, knocks this guy out. And then, for all the skeptics, does it again just to prove it was real. But we erupted. I mean, we were hugging, crying, screaming, celebrating. It was one of the most joyous memories I have. It's a top 10 memory of all time.
I appreciate that. And I definitely can envision the jumping and the hugging and the crying. And I bet that that's a feeling that, you know, most of Youngstown experienced that day. It's truly incredible. And you could see the appreciation he had when we talked about it for the fans. Like, it was like the people that were with me, he appreciates them.
He said Youngstown's fans are the best in the world. He named off a bunch of different places across the country and the world and said, Youngstown, when you get love from these people, they love you harder than anybody.
At what point, Luke, obviously you come from here, right? And there's not a lot of people that make it out, right? Like, there's a large amount of folks that don't make it out of Youngstown.
I've had a lot of friends pass away, a lot of family members pass away, drug-related stuff.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So at what point did you realize, and I know you like to still say like, hey, I don't know, I haven't done too much, but as your friend, I'm somebody that sees, a leader that's led high performing sales organizations for major companies all over the country. And he's usually the best in the country at doing it. At what point did you realize that you were destined to do great things?
My first telecom professional sales job, I had a great boss. His name was Jason Harmon. He lives in Oregon. I actually just reached out to him on LinkedIn a couple of months ago and just thanked him. I was having an introspective moment.
Yeah.
I'm an insomniac, so I have these moments in the middle of the night quite often. I'll go a day or two a week without sleep, and I really think about stuff.
Yeah.
But he hadn't come from the industry. We're working for a CLEC selling phone lines, plain old telephone lines, right? The very early stages of high-speed internet, 256K, when it was like $100 a month. Everybody had dial-up. Businesses weren't dependent on it. And we were there to unseat the incumbent, which at the time in Oregon for me was Quest.
Okay.
And my first day, he's just like, wear a nice shirt and tie and pants. Come to the office by 7:30. I'll walk you through what you need to do. He says, go out, walk in every business on whatever street it was. I don't remember. And it'll take you most of the day. It's a big street. Go in every business, no door unopened, and collect phone bills. Tell them, you work for this local company, and get their bill, bring it back to me at 5:30, 6 o'clock tonight, and we'll go through them and build proposals based on what we find. I said, okay, what's a good job? Like, what can I expect? I've never done this before. How he met me, for no reason at all, I was asked, I can't remember, I was doing refereeing at the Y.
Yeah.
And they asked me to dress up like Santa and sell raffle tickets at the front door. That's how he met me. I sold him raffle tickets. He was like, come to my office tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
That's how I got the job. And he had a son named Luke, actually, too. And he said, man, you get 3 bills. It's tough, man. These folks have been using the same company. We're obscure. They don't know our name. Get 3 bills and you had a hell of a day. And I came back with 11 bills.
Wow.
And I had an inkle, and he went crazy. He really celebrated, made me feel great. Yeah. And I thought, man, that wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
And I did 3X, almost 4X what he told me was a good job.
Wow.
I wasn't sure yet, but it felt like, shoot, maybe this is it. Maybe this telecom. And my dad was totally against it.
Really?
He likes selling tangible things.
Yeah.
I told him I was selling internet.
Yeah.
This is a guy born in 1942.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever had a computer. And he was like, why wouldn't you sell houses or something people can use? What are you selling?
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, let me give it a try and see how it goes. Then that company did a fiber build in Bandon, Oregon, of all places. Bandon. They get massive federal funding, state funding to do the first ever fiber to the prem build.
Wow.
This is fiber optics, way back when, early 2000s. Wow. Nobody even understood what the implications of that were, to include me, by the way, as a sales rep. Again, I kind of go out wet behind the ears. I've got a few months experience now selling telecom, but now this is a totally different setup. And the former mayor of Bandon was my GM in that market, and I lived in a hotel. I'd wake up 6 a.m., walk on the beach, roll up my suit pants, and just take in the coast of Oregon, which still to this day is just a hauntingly beautiful place that I love forever. And then I would go knock businesses until 5:30. Then I'd go knock residential until 9:10, until it got uncomfortable for me and them.
Yep.
Till they pretty much said dude, get out of here. I'm going to call the police.
Yeah.
I was so young and so hungry. And I went into a gem shop. And the mayor furnished me with a letter from Verizon to the city of Bandon's residents.
Yeah.
And it said, we have no intentions or plans of improving our infrastructure for 23 years. And it was this letter.
Yeah.
I had it laminated. I go into this gem shop. Guy would not buy a phone line from me. Finally, I got him months later. But I buy a piece of fiber optic glass. And I noticed when I sat it on the counter, my letter was out because I was showing it to the guy like, dude, Verizon doesn't love you. Like, come our way.
Yeah.
And it magnified the letters.
Okay.
And like you, because you are actually the best I have ever seen at this, creating stories behind these products that you can't touch or feel, right? Yeah. Telecom is not
selling through personal experience.
That's right.
Storytelling.
So I buy the gem and I go around and explain to everybody that now what this means is your phone calls and your internet service will fly at the speed of light, magnified through this fiber optic glass. This is a piece of it. Here's the letter. Here's what this does. And as soon as I brought that together,
off to the race.
I'm telling you, I could go to Bandon right now. I sold the Lighthouse Bed and Breakfast. Shirley Chalupa, God rest her soul. Her son took that over. I sold every person there. So I had a quota of $3,000 my first month. Wet behind the ears, I sell like $7-8 grand.
Wow.
And it just got bigger and better. That's when I knew like I can do this with the best of them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think back on, again, the question was kind of along the lines of, when did you know you're destined to do great things? And, I think of my career and there's kind of two people that really made an impact early on in my life or my career. And the first was my mother.
Yeah.
And she would tell me every day, you're destined to do great things. And she would pray on the way to school and say, it was always, I want to pray that my son is a social, an academic leader and a leader in the community. And, those things, hearing them every day from your mother, they stick with you, right? And then as I move into my career, I met you. And it's funny because you share that experience. Was it, Mike was his name? Or the son, Luke? Who were you talking about?
Oh, Jason.
Jason.
Yeah.
So, your experience with Jason was much like my experience with you, right? Except for the difference was I saw myself in you. Right? Like I looked up and I saw somebody, then I said, man, that guy's from Youngstown, right? right?
Dude, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Man.
And I'm like,
right now.
I can do that. Right? And, for me, like my career really made leaps and bounds under your leadership and my selling abilities and the sales process. And I fine tuned some of those skills. And, I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you, because
that means the world to me.
Yeah. You changed my life, man. You changed the life of my children. I had it in me, but you showed me a path.
Sure.
And that was, needed. So thank you.
Absolutely. Pay it forward as you have. I mean, we got to talk to Ben the other day. I saw that right there. And shout out to some unbelievable mentors I've had. I'd said Jason Harmon.
Yeah.
Tim Ross, Mark Bilton Smith, Matt Ballou.
Yeah.
Without any one of those guys.
Yeah.
We are not sitting.
Love TR.
I mean, my gosh, TR, my man. Andrew Known, like great leaders shaped my life as well. So we'll pay it forward.
That's amazing. So Luke, obviously we talked a little bit today about, your experience in the military. And I do want to thank you for your service, but I want to just have you share. Tell me a little bit about the Air Force.
So it was an interesting situation. I was a freshman at Youngstown State. And I didn't have a great vision. I thought, I'm going to go to school because I'm supposed to, because that's what, if I don't, then I won't get a good job and I won't succeed and I won't ever be able to buy a house or a nice car. So I went without a lot of vision. And I thought maybe I'll be a school teacher and coach basketball. Within, 2 months of starting school at Youngstown State, 9/11 happened. And I lived in an apartment, in Austintown, my mom was in the middle of my apartment in Youngstown State. Okay. So often I would drive, stop at my mom's, have a quick cup of coffee, maybe a cigarette, maybe some laughs.
We enjoyed some of those.
Yeah. My mom loves to make me food. So she would like make me some peanut butter and jelly toast and eggs. And I was like, God, I don't want to go to this history class. I skipped my first period class and I'm sitting on her couch eating peanut butter and jelly toast. And my mom almost always has the news on. And boom, this happens.
Or what is it? The selling show?
Or QVC.
or QVC.
Mom, get off there. Jeez. She's got more Thomas Kincaid paintings than any human being should ever have. So I'm sitting there and the first plane hits. And, at first, like everybody thought, like this is a fluke thing.
Yeah.
Like this was an accident.
Yep.
And then boom, less than 20 minutes later or so, boom, the other one hits. And I mean, God, everybody has their own version of the emotions that swept them. I was a young man. I was 18, 19 years old. And, Youngstown State shut down like most universities. I went to Mill Creek Park where we were today.
Yeah.
There's a huge weeping willow tree there. And I would go there and do a lot of thinking. And when the foliage is up, you can kind of hide under this tree. And it was September. And so the leaves were still on. And I remember for the first time thinking, cause I'm not a warrior. I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover. I like to laugh.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt people. That's not how my brain ticks, but I was as angry as I've ever been and I wanted revenge. And that was the first seed in that moment under that weeping willow tree that I thought, I'm going to leave this college thing that I was going to try to do without much of a vision, and I'm going to join the service. And then shortly thereafter I did. And it was a great experience. Truly, I would tell most young men and women, if they feel like they have it in you, not everybody's wired for that.
Right.
But it grows you up quick. It gives you a sense of purpose beyond yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like America, so many places, not just here, are missing that sense of purpose outside yourself.
Yep.
You're not thinking about your brother and sister. You're thinking about yourself. When you're in the service, you're in the foxhole with everybody else serving a purpose to protect and defend your country. That's not who I am by nature. That's not how I'm wired. But to have some time, a few years under my belt of that, incredible experience. I would recommend it for a lot of kids that don't quite have a vision yet.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you for your service. I do want to ask you, so you're somebody I know, you turned me on to a lot of books early in my career. I know you're a reader or a listener maybe at this point. A book a week is what I'm always hearing you say.
Yeah, it's about a book a week, yeah.
I want to hear, what are 3 books? And again, this show's really for the up and comers, right? The folks that are coming up the ranks behind us. What are 3 books that you feel like every leader or sales leader needs to read?
I'm going to give you the best leadership book I've ever read. I've read it 10 times. I actually had the great fortune to go through a 3-day workshop on it in my 20s. Okay. It's John Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership. I need to put you on these emails. I have probably 50 people that I send a weekly email every year. The last 21 weeks of the year, 1 a week, I send each law through 21.
Okay.
And I touch on what that law means to me. It keeps it super fresh for me. I've done this for many, many years. And I would say by far, from a leadership standpoint, that's the best book. I love psychology. I think so much about leadership and sales is understanding people.
Yeah.
That's psychology.
Yep.
Having empathy, having an emotional IQ, understanding triggers. So there's a book. It's a long book. It's called The Laws of Human Nature.
Okay.
Robert Greene, I want to say, is the author. And I've gone through that twice. It's an odyssey. But if you want to understand the psychology of people, he gives tons of examples through the book of real life figures in history. Nixon is one of them. There's a bunch. CEOs, there's a bunch. And it really helps you understand yourself better. It helps you understand people better. It makes you want to make little fixes and changes inside yourself when you start to understand the psychology of why what you're doing consistently might lead to some negative things down the line. So that's an amazing book. Again, it's really, really long. And I think my man, Jeb Blunt, Mike Weinberg is right there with him, but Jeb Blunt is, 10, 12 time plus bestseller, has a podcast, Sales Gravy. He's not paying me. Jeb, you should pay me at this point. I'm on the back of one of your books. He actually cites me. I can't remember which book, but Jeb Blunt's Fanatical Prospecting.
Okay.
And then right up against that, I would say Mike Weinberg's New Sales Simplified.
Yeah.
And he has a leadership version. I don't find it as impactful as the sales version.
Okay.
Those 2 books, Fanatical Prospecting, and Mike Weinberg's book, New Sales Simplified. You read those two books and you want to be a successful salesperson and you digest those, you're going to make a whole lot of money. Like, awesome. Let me promise you that. You want to give yourself a raise without the company doing it for you, make more commission, read those books.
Okay.
You're welcome. Get a raise.
You know, when you think about schooling, right? I know there was a point in time in our careers where you and I were sitting in Youngstown and our plan to earn a degree, which we really felt like was needed,
right?
Was to get an honorary degree from Youngstown State. We felt like maybe there was a connection.
Right. What can we do?
What can we do?
It's who you know, not what you know.
And you fast forward, we've both gone on to earn our degrees, and you've actually gotten your master's. And so I'd love to hear, you know, a little bit about that experience for you.
You know, it's funny. I was blessed to make a great living at such a young age, which is kind of in my brain why you went to school. I've now learned, having gone through the process, there's way more benefits than just landing a good job from going to school. There's ancillary benefits that unless you do it, you just don't know. But growing up here, that's what you thought. Like, if you want a good job, you got to go to school. Well, I'm, you know, fresh out of the Air Force, 21, 22 years old. I've got a good job. I'm making way more money than my mom or dad ever made. So why do I go back? Why do I spend that time? And I was a good student when I was at YSU, and I went back even while I was in the service because I had like different grants and stuff. I got straight A's while I was at YSU. But I didn't finish. And it was always kind of in my head, like, man, I do wish I finished that. I had some really good influences from friends. You being one, you started that journey. I had a friend, Jamie Strauss, that recommended that we go back in front of a friend group like, hey, and he's an awesome leader. Tons of respect for him. He put that plug in my head like, dude, we need to go back. Then Daniel Bowie, great friend of mine. I hired him at a company 10 years ago. Awesome leader, very wise beyond his years guy. And he was like, listen, man, if you can do it for free through your company, why on earth would you not like bite the bullet of time? The hardest thing about going to school for young people is paying back these loans and wanting to bite off on all this debt. Like, if you can do it through your company at no cost or low cost.
There's many companies out there.
Right. It's very popular. The cost of a degree now is over $100,000. So I'm looking at myself like, how do I justify not doing it?
Right.
And he went off and started doing it. So I did it. And I honestly, like, he was the push. He was that last, it was in my head. He was that last push. And once I started doing it, I really started loving it.
So I'm going to take you kind of a totally different direction here, and then we'll bounce back to the career. But I'm trying to weave in, you know, again, some of our personal relationship along with some of your business success and leadership. You know, we bonded over Larry Bird, right? And
love me some Larry.
You know, I love Larry. I grew up a Magic fan. I love Larry a lot more now over the years since we've connected. But it turned into me, you know, heading to French Lick, Indiana to tour his house, going to, Indiana State and seeing his statue every time we drove through Terre Haute from Kansas City to Cincinnati. I've got like 1 million family photos in front of it. And now the museum's coming. But I just wanted to ask, like, you know, you grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. Why are you a Larry Bird guy? And where did that love for him come from?
You know, you met a guy last night at playing a sport at the highest level, a lot like Larry Bird.
Yeah.
Youngstown's a hardworking, blue-collar place.
Yeah.
French Lick, Indiana, same thing.
Rough and tumble.
And, you know, I joke, you know, I love comedy, and I would equate it like what made me love Larry Bird. It's kind of like Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights, like what he says about Big Red. I'll say it to the camera. You know, if you don't like Larry Bird, fuck you. So here you got this hardworking guy, comes from nothing, big family, father commits suicide.
Garbage man.
Literally, I read my kids a bedtime story that I got from him that talks about when he was a garbage man. It takes you through his youth and then his success. I'm a huge Larry, as you know. And here's this guy that inspires not just a city, but a league alongside Magic Johnson.
Right.
Couldn't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Courtship arrivals, man.
Courtship, which we probably watched 10
times at least. At least. I think I watched it again last week on a plane. But here's this guy, can't jump, can't run, which by the way, I love basketball, played it my whole life. I also can't jump, can't run. And I could relate to him. And then he's out there like audaciously talks more shit than any player in the league.
Yeah, he does.
And he can't run and can't jump.
And you didn't necessarily know it at the time. It's all coming out.
If you're not inspired by Larry Bird, you're not paying attention. And I know, you're from Oregon. I let you listen to a clip from Terrell Brandon talking about as a rookie.
We filmed in his barbershop that we were in front of his barbershop. That was your first
Conversations
episode 1.
And it made me think of it yesterday when I showed it to you. He recalls this story.
Yeah.
Poor Craig Elo.
Yeah.
Like he recalls as a rookie, Craig Elo comes to center court to guard Larry Bird, and Larry Bird walks over to young Terrell Brandon and says, dude, you got this white boy checking me? Y'all are dead. That's Larry Bird.
And Craig Elo, if you're watching, we need you on the show. We want to talk about
Craig,
Larry busting your chops.
We need to sit with you in Cleveland or wherever you live. You need to be on the show.
Because of the MJ shot, I only imagine him in Cleveland.
And he was a great player. And I got to, as a kid, I saw 2 Cavs games. My mom didn't make a lot of money. It was not easy to get to a Cavs game, but I saw 2 Cavs games. Elo was in them.
Yeah.
And he was a great player.
He could play.
Yeah.
So, Luke, you're one of the best speakers and presenters that I've ever seen, right? And again, this show is really about giving back. And so I wanted to ask, are there any tips or tricks, learnings that, you feel like have helped morph you into this amazing presenter?
Yeah, I think the advice I would give that somebody could go out and chase down is definitely get trained. So if your company has trainings, I went through an incredible training. It was a multi-day training, and it was executive presentation skills. Okay. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to smash this. Yeah. I went in I don't get butterflies when I have to talk.
Yeah.
And that's a nature advantage, not a nurture advantage. So I don't know what that's about.
Yeah.
But I like to talk. It actually brings me energy and joy. So that's an advantage. I walk in there super cocky, like I'm going to have so much fun these next 3 days. And it's all these talented leaders getting together. And I just get filleted. This trainer was incredible. Broke me down, videoing me, breaks down everybody in the class, shows me all these things I'm doing wrong. And that really elevated me. That's probably 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
That helped me understand hand placement, body language. I tend, when I'm speaking to large groups, physically move my body around, walk around. That actually is a huge distraction from the words that are being said. So good training, reading books on the subject, and watching other great speakers on YouTube, because it's my craft, like I should be good at it. It's like Larry shooting free throws, like you got to do it.
Yeah.
That really helps. And
there's so many of those classes out there.
Oh, so many.
It seems like every time I ask a great speaker that they refer back to a class they took.
Yeah.
And that's just about investing in yourself, right? And obviously there are companies that offer certain types of training, but that's something anybody could go out and get immediately today.
Yeah. Another thing I observe in confident people, let alone, maybe not so confident people when they speak, they have a tendency to speed way up.
Yeah.
I think most of us probably do, because even myself, I can catch myself on occasion, but I'm very cognizant of it.
Yep.
Be cool, be slow, play loose. Remind yourself, be cool, be calm, slow down, play loose.
Yeah.
That makes a good speaker too.
Absolutely.
And be sincere and be passionate about what you're talking about. You almost can't lose.
So Luke, obviously you've accomplished a lot in your career. What would you say you're most proud of?
I named a few gentlemen that had a tremendous impact on me, and that's just a few. There's many more. But what each of those gentlemen have in common for me is they took a shot on me. They took a chance on me where maybe I had gaps, maybe I had things to learn, but they knew I could get there. They saw this special spark in me. I take a ton of pride in seeking and searching that out, because I was a young leader and wet behind the ears. And I was given a ton of grace while I made mistakes as well. Yeah. That's something that's not done enough, by the way.
Yeah.
I think humans are fallible. We make mistakes. I think we're kind of expected to be perfect. We will never get to perfection unless we're shown grace along the way as we improve. These guys did that for me. And, I've been fortunate to be a part of hundreds of people's career growth to the next thing. Sometimes it's within the company that I met them in. Oftentimes it's a bigger opportunity outside. Some of these people that I've met, that I've hired, that I've mentored, that I've invested in, like I was invested in, have gone on to become very wealthy and far exceeded me now.
Yeah.
And that is by far what I have the most pride in. Like to see their lives morph. I meet them. They're in a 2-bedroom apartment, 1-bedroom apartment, old beat up car. 2 years later, they've got a brand new car. They've had their first kid. They get married. They buy a nice house. There's so many of those stories that inspires me.
I mean, think about it, Luke, from my perspective. There was a time where I signed up to move across the country from beautiful Oregon, the great state of Oregon,
right,
to Youngstown, Ohio for $24,000 salary working for you. And like, I mean, I almost pinch myself saying it, right? Like that was crazy.
Right.
And I did it because you talked about recognizing raw talent, taking a chance, allowing them to make mistakes along the way, which I clearly did at times. But I was one of those people you speak of, hundreds of people you've impacted. I was one of those people, right? And you look at where my family's at today and the things we've been able to do. That moment where I was sitting in the car and signed for 24,000, like I did that because I trusted you. And I just, again, thank you.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you. Cause I've learned so much from you along the way as well.
Appreciate it. Obviously you've gotten to know my family over the years. One of the things that I seek out in these interviews with people that I respect, is a lot of tips, right? And whether it's for me or different family members, friends, I want to ask you, my 2 girls.
Yeah.
What advice do you have, for my 2 daughters?
I have 2 daughters, awesome girls. Aurora's 20. Scarlett just turned 13 in January, which is terrifying to me. I think all we can do is set them up for success the very best we can. I think the role of a father is to provide and protect. You do that. Maybe you do some other things wrong, but if you can provide and protect, you're halfway there. I think the last piece is just unconditionally love them, give them that grace. They will then show that love back and be productive people. And look, life is funny and crazy. It's literally a game of minute by minute, hour by hour choices and decisions we make. And sometimes we make one decision that changes the entire trajectory of our entire life for the good or for the bad.
Yeah.
And you and I as fathers, as much as we want to have control, we don't control that.
Yeah.
They're going to grow up. They're going to make their own decisions. Aurora is like one of the strongest people I've ever met. She's so unique. She is a person that makes her own decisions, and I have to trust her in those. I can give her advice, but I can't tell her what to do. Luckily, I can still tell Scarlett what to do, like you can tell Monroe. But if you can protect them, especially in this crazy, chaotic, unpredictable world, and provide for them and set them up with the opportunities that maybe you didn't have as a kid, while you love them, that's the best you can do. The rest is in God's hands, truly. Yeah. Like the rest is in God's hands. I think about how different children achieve. You have one kid that maybe grew up with every advantage and turns out to be a drug addict and throws their life away. Then you have another kid, my favorite basketball player of all time, right there with Larry Bird, LeBron James, Northeast Ohio guy. This was a dude couch surfing, ended up having to go live with his coach, like never met his father. He's a billionaire in his mid-30s, like one of the most successful people, grew up in Akron, like it's basically Youngstown there, by the way.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on them at the end of the day. We can set them up. We can give them all the advantages we can, but they got to make their own decisions in this life, man, just like we did.
And it's empowering them to make the right decision.
Right.
Well, Luke, last question here. What do you want to be remembered for?
I touched on my dad. I miss him dearly. He's been passed away. He passed away January 1st, 15 years ago. And he never got to meet my oldest son. And, he was a man that lit up a room and that people loved.
Yeah.
And I don't care if I'm remembered for being a leader at a company, being a good salesperson. I want people to think back at memories of me and with me that make them smile.
Yeah.
I want them to think back on me fondly, like I know people that knew my father did. And if I do that, I win.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I mean, we've had, there's 4 of us around here and spending a couple of days together. And obviously we've talked about a lot of incredible memories over the days, but I can say that you're successfully achieving that. Love you. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
Love you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Conversations. We'll be back in the future with more exciting guests. If you like what you saw today, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you.